Hi, I'm David, a former ground and sim instructor at Flightsafety Wichita, and I am here at the White House on my day off with Linda, my girlfriend. Hey, there's Susan. Susan and I worked as caravan pilots for the same FedEx feeder years ago.
Hi David, it's great seeing you here. Is your girlfriend Linda doing well?
Yes, Susan, she is. She went to get water for us and will return shortly. Where are you working now, Susan?
David, I am working as a first officer at the same regional airline, but I'm getting pretty tired of being on the road all the time, and getting to a major is just a long shot. Flightsafety is advertising for a caravan instructor at their Wichita East facility. Didn't you used to work there?
Yes, I did, Susan, but I cannot recommend the job.
It's a surprise, David. Why not?
Well, did you know they require a 2-year non-prorated training agreement that binds you to the job for 2 full years whether you like working there or not?
No, I did not know that, but a contract is a contract, David, and I have had to sign contracts before to get jobs I wanted.
That is true, Susan, and if I recall, the FedEx feeder we both worked for had a 1-year prorated contract for that job. Prorated means that if you resign early, you are responsible only for the portion of the amount that remains when you leave. If you leave after half of it, then you owe only half the amount to the company to satisfy the terms of the agreement. That is what prorated means.
Well, I do know what prorated means, but apparently this training agreement at Flightsafety is not prorated. In other words, you cannot resign your position before the 2 years of the contract is up, or else risk owing the full contract amount to Flightsafety. Exactly how much is the contract amount, David?
$13,500 plus interest and administrative fees, Susan. It adds up fast. I resigned at about halfway through my 2-year term, and in only the last 6 months Flightsafety has added another $1,000 to what they say I now owe them.
What a ripoff, David.
I agree, Susan. Most people do not know what they are getting into with this nasty training agreement.
Well, David, I agree it's a ripoff, but you did make the decision to resign after all. What did you expect Flightsafety to do?
I expected Flightsafety to be honest with me, Susan, and they weren't. It is simply a matter of good faith that any employer is honest with their employees. Unfortunately, after some time working there, I found that what I was told about the nature of the job before taking it was not true of the actual job. Namely, quality of life is very poor in this job. I was forced to resign because of that and because of the stressful nature of working there.
Forgive me for being forward, David, but if I understand you correctly, you resigned early just because you were somewhat stressed. Since when is pilot work not fairly stressful? For that matter, lots of jobs are fairly stressful. I can't really see your side of this, David.
Susan, you and I have had stressful pilot jobs before, and we both know what pressure and stress are all about in professional pilot life. I agree. But I have never had an employer speak as many untruths, work me as hard, and require that I bend flight standards as much as Flightsafety. The long hours, graveyard shifts, early shows, and short weekends were tiring. I was actually coping with those things to the best of my ability. But when a senior instructor, the short one in caravan who has been there a long time, told me to omit facts pertaining to the safe operation of the caravan ostensibly to increase company revenue, I felt the environment of falsehoods went too far, and I had no choice but to resign. I did try and talk all this over before resigning, but it was clear that I was seen as the problem and not the low level of personal integrity exhibited by these people.
Well, all that sounds awful, David, but I think the part about bending flight standards to maximize revenue is the only thing that really matters here. If they are suing you for the amount of the training contract, you may have to hire a lawyer to demonstrate the contract is invalid due to their asking you to do something which is forbidden.
I agree, Susan, and as soon as I saw they are not willing to honestly and openly discuss problems with what they are doing and yet requiring me to go along with it, I had no choice but to resign due to my conscience, what to speak of legal risks, and in that sense, Flightsafety forced me to resign by its own actions, and it was not voluntary on my part.
I agree, David, but I have to admit I'm surprised Flightsafety did that.
I was too, Susan, very surprised and disturbed by it.
Well, David, I guess you're going to have to defend yourself against Flightsafety in a civil court in order to get relief. One thing I wonder is, how are you going to prove any of this?
It's my word against theirs, Susan, but I am still hoping they will come to their senses and admit their own greediness caused all this, and they are not due the thousands of dollars they think I owe them. I do not want to defend myself in court if it goes to that, but I do feel that truth is on my side and a civil court judge should recognize it. Even if Flightsafety fails to back down, the fact remains I am a very poor target for collection, as I am a poor man with assets hidden, and I do not work for regular wages either, in case they plan to seek wage garnishment. There really is no way for them to collect from me, and at the same time I will make a public stink about whatever they do. They really ought to think hard about pursuing me over this.
Damn, David, you are really hunkering down for a nasty fight?
Unfortunately, Susan, I have no choice at this point.
That seems to be true as long as you cannot pay that training agreement out of pocket, or as long as you have conscientious objections to what they required of you while working there.
It's indeed the conscience issue, Susan, and I do have a strong sense of conscience dictating my actions in all this.
Well, look, but you are going to pay for that conscience of yours one way or another, David, it looks like.
Yes, Susan, but the way I see it, I would be far worse off emotionally if some pilots I signed off to operate caravans under flight safety's inadequate training program then crashed and died, simply because I failed to put my foot down and do what is right as an instructor. If that happened, it would be far worse than this lawsuit over my resignation a few months prior to contract expiration.
Yes, David, I guess you are aware that a Cessna 208B Grand Caravan impacted a hillside between Zipacon and Facatativa, Colombia last year. This is about 24 kilometers northwest of the Bogota airport. All 8 military crew members died in that crash. That was the same airplane and training program you were involved with at Flightsafety Wichita. Everyone died in that crash. How did that affect you since you worked there at that time?
I am afraid that is true, Susan, although I was not involved in that crew's actual training, although I knew about it. That was a terrible tragedy, so perhaps you see how my conscience might have been sensitive about properly instructing people in the caravan. But look, Linda is back with some water, so let's continue this conversation another time.
Sure, David, I will be happy to meet you and Lena later today for a beer and some nice music.
Damn tooting, Susan. Linda and I love beer and we'll meet you later for a drink.